Yo, what is up everybody? It is Cavalier Guide for December 2022 time. Let's get into this. And of course, if you go to the link in the description, it'll take you to the particular guide. It's a spreadsheet. It has a tabs at the bottom that says one about the paths and the particular ones, the quests, and then it goes on to like bosses, miss and evade counters and immunities and stuff like that. But yeah, check it out, link in the description, and we'll be referring to it in this video. Kicking off with 1.1. 1.1 is all about your science champions. And this one in particular is Academic Constitution with Vexing Blight and Contagion. The way that I kind of approach this is all about champions that have poison immunity in order to make this more cleaner. You don't have to have that. It just makes it a lot more easier. This is where, you know, you've got your Immortal Abominations, your She-Hulk, stuff like that. And it does open up other types of champions from different types of classes who can do this particular path. I've used loads. I mean, I've used Human Torch, for example, Hulk, Immortal Hulk. Whole plethora of champions can be used effectively. It doesn't have to be science. It doesn't have to be. Well, it doesn't have to be science champions, but it doesn't have to be those that are quintessentially poison immune. Overseer, Cap Infinity War with skill, you know, shrug those effects, get those passive furies quicker. It's up to you how you play that. And I think this month the kind of narrative is that you don't really need to use a lot of specific type of champions, especially because a lot of the bosses seem to be quite, well, you can deal with them with a lot of champions. I can't remember who I used against this. I'll probably put on screen who I use. I normally do that for these particular videos. But yeah, we've got Footloose. I think I actually used Dr. Doom at a time and then used like Apocalypse. Just to kind of try out some options, and it was like, well, just anything really kind of like works with it. Footloose, yeah, okay, an unstoppable effect comes up. You can look to suppress it with a stagger, with a nullify, or whatever. And then you've got stacking power. The attacker gains no power from landing or receiving attacks from passive power gain. Effects or buffs, whenever the attacker gains a buff, they will also generate 20% of bar power. Any buff, like dealing champion, any cosmic champion, Odin, King Groot, Medusa, the list goes on. Angela, lots of options for that. It's just a case of watching out for kinetic transference and maybe champions that have power control within their kit. Could be handy, but I've got to be honest, I feel this is a very much simple fight, just sticking the champion to an SP1 as much as possible. But again, it's down to personal preference. I think this is a very straightforward month when it comes to bosses and paths. And now on to 1.2. This is Punishment Glutton, so it's all about your skill-based champions for this. Tons of options, and I've probably got to add more to this particular list. Squirrel, Gwenpool, Nick Fury, Black Widow Deadly Origin. Gets shocks quickly, gets these debuffs quickly. Those champions on rotation mean that you get quicker accumulation of Fury passives, which mean that are going to be more effective to take on the lane. It's no-brainer with that one, Punishment Glutton, and I'm sure there's a lot more to add to that. Black Cat, for example, a recent one. Tons more. Again, same thing as I said before, any champions really work for certain situations, or a good chunk of like various champions. Mystics could be the way to go with this. Supercharger, first of all, is that something to watch out for? Possibly. Every 15 seconds, defender activates a power gain buff, granting 20% of their maximum power. You've then got Steady Perseverance, so the champion will get a stun immunity buff. And also Combat Deja Vu, which is if you repeat the same action, then you're going to get an unblockable buff up. I would say any Mystic champion. You know, I'm not going to specifically say, you know, one or the other. I like Dr. Doom, but I didn't necessarily agree with the rotation of it. I kind of think that Black Widow Deadly Origin, Black Widow Clairvoyant is a better option for this. Symbiote Supremes, any Mystic that's got some easy rotations of suppression to deal with the unblockable, because you may want to repeat the same kind of action to deal with that stun immunity, the unblockable buff, and then, you know, stun immunity as well you might want to deal with. So again, down to a personal preference to which champions you feel that are going to be best to suppress when it comes to stagger, Mystic, rotations, just suppressing buffs in general. In 2.1 now, and this is all about Mystic champions, this is Arcane Zeal, Steady Perseverance, Arc Overload. Now, in a nutshell, getting rotations of stagger champions or stagger kind of mystics are the way to go with this one. Tons of options to take into the fray, whether or not you got Juggernaut, whether or not you got Dr. Doom, Thor Jane Foster, Black Widow Clairvoyant. The list goes on. Symbiote Supreme. Again, down to personal preference of what particular mystic is your strongest mystic and the mystic you want to use in this particular situation. So yeah, Scarlet Witch I might have to break out for a bit of fun, but we'll have to see with that one. And the 2.1 boss is Agent Venom. Agent Venom does have some tricky things about it, and there's possibly two ways to approach this. Pumping Iron is one of the main things to point out. Champions that gain buffs are going to be helpful, especially to deal if they've got second thing, which is dealing with the armor up buff, which the champion gets from Stalwart Shield, which is each armor up buff on the defender reduces generation. Actually, no, it's one of these. No, it's defensive transference. So the champion gets an armor up buff. So suppressing those, you can go down several options with it. You can either look to stagger that one, but do bear in mind, it's like you have to have a Mystic champion with Odin pre-fights on in order to be able to do the damage, but at the same time suppress the incoming armor break. Now, that puts too many layers onto it, so you could go down the route of just straight up armor break champions that have buffs. So you could go down the route of Medusa, King Groot, Venom, Angela. Those are champions that got armor break, but at the same time generate buffs, so it kind of helps to kind of like deal with it. I did think about a way of dealing with tenacity, which is the other way of looking at it, with having White Magneto, having that pre-fight, which then allows you to have that passive parry. So you could look to do that. But again, there's too many layers on layers on layers on layers. So I think it may be best to go down the route of Mystic-based champion, or Mystic-based champion with armor break, or a armor break champion in general. So it's up to you how you want to approach this. There's several ways to kind of look at it, but it's a pretty simple fight once you think about the way of going, right, if you can get past tenacity, then all you really need to focus on is having a buff dealing champion that has armor break. And that's the easiest way to kind of look at it. 2.2 now, and this is Seeing Red. So in Seeing Red, this is all about mutant-based champions. Ton of options for this. You could go down the route of having double immunity options. Again, personal preference. Don't hit into the block. You won't get poison. But at the same time, the way this kind of works is that, well, it reduces a lot of the bleed damage you get in general. So it's, look, this you can use a lot of mutant-based champions. There's going to be some that I think maybe will be better than others. But again, that's down to a personal preference with it. So Seeing Red, and options: Iceman, Omega Red, Magneto, Colossus, Apoc, Old Man Logan, Rogue, Emma Frost, Magneto, House of X, double immunity champions, bleed immune champions, most if not all mutants. The list goes on. The list goes on of champions that are options for this. And on to the boss. The boss is Groot, and Groot, things to mention about Groot is Rich Get Richer. You've also got Staggering Beauty, and you've got Divine Barrier. I don't know if this one's all about kind of saying, look, you don't and you shouldn't really use mystics against this. You can do, again, it may be a bit of a rough fight, but I think it might pinpoint to a lot of other options that could be better for this, especially with Staggering Beauty. While close to the defender, the attacker gains a stagger debuff every 3 seconds, nullifying their next buff. Kind of annoying because that plays into Rich Gets Richer, because you have to, like, having unique buffs on you gains your power. But you can look to some really cool options. King Groot, for example, and Crossbones will shrug any kind of debuff off, which is helpful for the interaction. But at the same, and they gain buffs, which is good, so they'll gain power. But you may want to look to it in a different way, going like, okay, we'll slightly keep your distance, and then look to the likes of Venom, Odin, Gwenpool, Angela as options. Angela will, keep regaining those particular buffs more frequently. But then again, it's down to you how you want to play that particular fight out. I like King Groot for this. It was slow and steady wins the race. He was shrugging things off. Debuff shruggers all the way. Or you may want to do Odin pre-fights. Again, we talked about Odin pre-fights. So you may want to do like bring in Odin, put some pre-fight buffs on, and then the champion will be able to kind of like, shrug stuff off, shrug that stagger when it comes on. But at the same time, I think in theory, keep those particular buffs on them because they were part of the pre-fight build, as opposed to being nullified off. But, again, it's down to personal preference of how you want to approach that one, and as well if you want to use Mystic Champions in general. Now we're coming to the business end. 3.1 now, Jessica Jones. And the path clearing side of things is all about tech-based champions. There's quite a few here for this, but I would say it's, again, down to you, like how you want to approach it, especially for when building up armor breaks, because that's the other thing as well. You may want to build up armor breaks on this as part of like Infectious Wrath. But you could go a different route. Like if you look at healing suppression as another option when it comes to the champion getting nanite healing, That could be something. Was it Vital Strikes? When the defender strikes the attacker's block, the defender regenerates 250% of their damage dealt. Again, down to you how you want to approach this, whether or not you're suppressing with the regen. But let's face it, this is mainly about armor breaks, so you may want to kind of deal something with armor breaks. Again, down to you how you want to approach this. When it comes to stuff, Penny Parker, I think, got to add to this list as well. Awakened, Penny Parker Awakened. There's a few others as well that kind of have heal block or have like ways of dealing or armor break. It's either armor break or it's the other route. So you got Warlock, Infection, and SP2, Hulkbuster special attacks. When it comes to armor breaks, Iron Man Infinity War, Cap Infinity War with Petrify, Archangel as well. Again, if you want to kind of go down that route, it doesn't have to be about tech champions, because it could be about suppressing the regeneration and focusing on that. And a few others as well. Mysterio with the 4th light attack for the armor break. The list goes on. There's so many. And boss-wise, when it comes to Jessica Jones, the way of kind of approaching this, hard to think about what the best one is. I kind of feel like taking the champion down, like knocking the champion down, is probably the way to go. Make a stand. The defender has indefinite protection, reducing damage received by 75%. This goes into cooldown for 15 seconds when knocked down. So just knock down the champion and then just do some damage. It's pretty much kind of there. Prey on the weak. Is that a problem? Defender gains 2% of their max power each time a buff is nullified, expires, or is removed off the attacker. Armor break debuffs nullify armor breaks. Again, I got to be honest. The only way I looked at this was bleed vulnerability, and I think that's just fine. Using any kind of like bleed-based champion and playing into that is normally the best. You could do Archangel. I personally used that and found that champion just easy. It's made this like so easy, just an easy fight. Nick Fury, Falcon, Black Cat, Warlock, Parry Heavy, Black Panther, Domino. You know, there's a whole lot of champions that can do this fight. Just as long as you keep champions at SB1 and be careful, and then that's it. What's that happen? I didn't say anything. Look at that, it just came up there for my. I'm not going to say the word out loud, but you saw it. It was on screen right there. Didn't even say the word. But there you go. Like, I think it's just quite an easy fight with champions that bleed. And now on to our final path, which is 3.2 even, and it is Crack in the Armor. This is all about your cosmic champions being as helpful as possible for this. I think Armor Break seems to be the what's always been referred to here. Medusa with the medium attacks, Terrux, Corvus, Null, I think SP1 rotation, Angela special attacks, Ronan with heavy attacks, Cull Obsidian heavy attacks. There's so many. Venom heavy attacks. Tons of options to take on here. You can be cheeky, stagger champions, Morningstar with SP2 if it kind of gets a bit too much of building those armor ups. You can slap in an SP2 for a load of damage. Again, down to you how you want to approach this for Crack in the Armor, and I'm sure more champions are going to add to this as well. From a boss breakdown perspective, again, this is going to be down to like personal preference of how you want to tackle this. Mutant champions, maybe. I gotta be honest, like there's two easy cheeses of this one. My personal favorite is using Archangel. I did use it with my White Magneto, and that is because I saw a couple of videos where Mantis was purifying some things, and I wanted to make sure that was like, I'd rather kind of go in with something extra to kind of go like, okay, well, if this champion is purifying stuff, I need to kind of like make sure I'm covered. But I have found no issues. But I don't know if that's because my neurotoxins were reducing the ability accuracy, therefore allowing me to bypass whatever it was. I even looked at the champion's kit and couldn't find anything in particular to kind of shout out. But, you know, again, it might be something I have to revisit when I do an updated version of this particular guide. The second easy cheese is Ebony Maw. I've seen a lot of people kind of slapping the champion with that one. But yeah, I think this is another month where a little bit of fun with Archangel comes into play. Archangel, the saving grace for the last 3.1 and 3.2, which ain't too bad. Especially because we get, there's other stuff that I want to focus on this month, like getting units for the Banquet event. So yeah, I need to kind of like get on with that one. So I can now park the Cavalier difficulty for a good 20 plus days to focus on units, to focus on the Banquet event and getting my non-spending units. But yeah, that's been the video. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the link in the description. Check out some other content which will be located on screen right now. I'll see you all very soon. Much love and goodbye.